Hello and welcome to Tiff's Talks. I am here with the beautiful Alexandra Wenman.
Hello.
Hi, Al. Uh,
Hi.
it's so fab to have you here. I mean, we've
It's
got a
great.
story, we've got history, haven't we,
We've got
darling?
a history. Yes.
For me, it was quite a magical story. How we got together was quite a magical story. I was in my shop, I think it must have been 2003, and I stocked Prediction magazine. And I used to go to the tarot column religiously. Every time that it came in, it was like, tarot column. And I would read it and I would be like, I really want to write this column, right? And so I did that every month for 3 years. And I never took any practical, steps to making that happen. It was just like that. And then one of my friends put us in contact because she knew you, she met you, and she didn't know about my dream. It was for you reviewing one of my courses in Cornwall, wasn't it?
Yep, yep.
And then it was like, I think it was the book launch of the Transformational Truth of Tarot. I think a couple of days before that, I was in the kitchen and I just saw in my head prediction land in my lap. And it was like open on the tarot column, and they were like, "That's yours." And then you came up to me on the book launch and said, "Would you like to write the tarot column for Prediction magazine?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I already knew that."
Yeah. We've been calling you for a while, I think.
So yeah, that's how far we go back. That was 2011.
Yeah,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah,
Wow. And what a
2000.
journey we've both had since then. Wowzers.
Yes, and I'm really honoured that you're here and you're sharing this journey as well here, because you've got such powerful journey both behind you now and in front of you. I mean, it just seems like that's the way it is, for you. And so I'm really honoured, to be sharing this with you and seeing your journey over the last several years. Yeah, 7 years. There's a
Wow.
saying that says, the one that says people are in your life for a season, a reason, a lifetime. And they say, I heard this the other day and I've been measuring things since, and I don't think there's ever a black and white fail proof thing, but it said if it makes 7 years, it makes a lifetime.
If you can pass the 7-year itch, eh?
Indeed. And thinking about it, the friends that I've had for over 7 years that I haven't fallen out with, are there. They're just there. They do tend to be there. So it's like, oh yeah, that's quite interesting, this 7 year
We've
thing.
evolved so much since then too, because I remember when I was teaching my angelic Reiki workshops and you had your online business and you helped me promote them. We've worked together in and kind of danced around each other in such different ways, shapes and
Mm.
forms, haven't we? Like it's always been a sort of right, what have we got next in the little cauldron of Tiffy and Al? How's it
Absolutely.
going to unfold?
And it never seems to be a something to work at.
Yeah, it just
It's just
happened.
there. It comes, it floats and dances and connects. So yeah, thank you for being here. You've got such an amazing story, I know, and you're usually the one doing the interviewing.
No, I might not shut up. You can tell me not to talk over you.
Oh God, no! I think it's great that you're actually getting a chance to be interviewed. My knees are knocking. It's like, oh my gosh, like yeah, okay, anyway. So I've got Al here. It's amazing, guys. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your journey from, how it started and what have been your main learnings along the way that have brought you to where you are now and what you do now.
Oh God, I'll try and keep it as brief as possible
Mm,
because a lot of people have probably heard this already. But
mm,
I think mainly in terms of this idea of spiritual awakening or sort of becoming aware that there's something more on this planet. It was never linear for me. It's never kind of been, I went through one awakening and I was in kind of living in my 3D material life, and then suddenly, boom, I was awake. To me, it's been a very long, hard journey, and I know a lot of people will resonate with this. It's sort of like, I tend to have, it's like all or nothing. I don't know if I kind of asked for that on a soul level or something before I came into this life, but on paper, my life has always looked really, really blessed. And people have often said to me, "You're so lucky," and I have had, like, my upbringing was miraculous and amazing. I had this beautiful childhood growing up on the beach in Australia. My parents are still together and very much in love. I have a family. There's 5 kids in my family. I'm really close, thick as thieves with all my siblings, and most of us are girls. A family full of women, and one brother who's the youngest. Um, but it's kind of, I always had this kind of internal struggle going on. Even when I was younger, I was always a bit of a Pollyanna, like, always would have this optimistic outlook and see the best in every situation. But then
Mm.
underneath there was always a bit of a sadness, and I think I battled with depression, and I didn't really know what it was, because I would repress it and I would suppress it, and kind of push it down and just be like, no, no, it's good. And I was raised a Catholic, so you had to be the good girl and all of that stuff. And so I was kind of well behaved up until I reached the age of 14 years old. And then I went on a massive rebellious streak,
Mm.
which I didn't have much room to do the rebellious streak in, because my mother was very strict.
Mm.
So I think I rebelled, got caught drinking alcohol in the mall in town with my friends, and got grounded for a year. So then got sent to
Wow.
boarding school. So it was like, no, you will not
Gosh.
misbehave. You will be in this container. So I was constantly wanting to break out.
Wow.
And then
So sorry. So you went to you got sent to boarding school.
I went to boarding school for my last 2 years, which I loved, because to me it was freedom, even though I was behind a barbed wire fence and with all girls. It was a Church of England boarding school. So to get out of Catholicism for the first time in my life was
Gosh.
amazing. And it actually gave me more freedom than I had at home. Bless you, Mum. Sorry to say. I couldn't wait to go.
Wow. I mean, was that because of the rebellion that you got sent to boarding school, or was it
It was
something else?
interesting because it was always on the cards. Like when I was very little, my mother used to threaten me with boarding school, and she'd say, "If you don't behave, I'll send you all to boarding school." Right? That was the threat. And then as
Uh-huh.
I got older, I was like, "Send me to boarding school. I really want to go to boarding school. I don't want to live in this house anymore." And then she
Gosh.
used to threaten me with not sending me to boarding school. So it'd be like, "If you don't behave and do what I tell you, you won't be going to boarding school." I was like, "Just get me to boarding school." It was ridiculous. So I did go.
Gosh.
I went in year
Wow.
11 and 12, and I had the most fun ever. All the girls I boarded with are still like family to me. That some of them
Oh,
live in
amazing.
London, some of them, one of my really close ones, one of my roommates just moved home last year to Sydney. But it was brilliant because my boarding school's motto was "Let your light shine," and it was all about women doing as well as men. It
Wow.
was very much, they've now formed a network called the SPAN Network. My school was called Skeggs Darlinghurst in Sydney, and they're very for women, women's rights, and it was a great container for me coming in from adolescence into adulthood and growing up as a young woman, because I my passion for writing in English unfolded there. I went on and did English literature at university after that, and so it kind of put the foundations of my editing career and my writing career in place. And then I sort of lived in Sydney for a while, went to work for a magazine. But when I was 21, I met an Englishman, and I decided I was going to run away to England. And again, it was me wanting to get away, break out, find my feet. And I moved to London. I'd always wanted to come here and live here. I felt this kind of affinity, this pull to be in England. My grandmother was born here, and we had ancestry here.
Hmm.
So I came to London thinking, oh, it's going to be really easy. It'll be great. Everyone speaks English. And basically, I landed on my butt and had no idea how to look after myself, afford very much to live in. I had a big wake up call. And the depression that I'd been holding at bay came surging up, came to the surface, and I was having panic attacks. I couldn't understand what was going on. But I now know that I am an extreme empath, and so I got to this melting pot of history, and I started to experience spirit energy. So I was kind of picking up on all these energies and had no idea how to shield my energy field or protect myself. And all of the emotions and things that I'd taken on from friends and people, and a lot of my past life karma was being triggered all at once. And I went into overwhelm, massive overwhelm. And it was like I didn't know what was going on. So I was having these panic attacks. I was just trying to hold it together. And everything just kept going wrong. Where my life had been really blessed, everything I touched seemed to have turned to gold. Everything fell apart. And it was like my first big, massive, big awakening. And I started to experience mediumship, but I didn't know what it was. My relationship was unhappy as well. I was with the wrong person, bless him. We went home. I went home after about 2 years and had a big fight with my mum, and just kind of in the end went to apologize to her because we'd had this big bust up because I felt really torn between the boyfriend and the mother, and it was all like, ah. And so I went to apologize to her, and she basically, I ended up coming clean about how tough my life was, and how I was really struggling. And refused to come home too. I have this stubborn streak. No, I will prove it. But at my calling, I knew I had to be here. I didn't know why, but I knew I was here for a reason. But she just said to me, well, have you asked your angels for help? And it was a real turning point in my life, that one sentence, because I always believed in angels when I was a kid, but as I grew up, I kind of thought mum was a bit I was like, come on, mum, what's going on? But I think I was at such rock bottom at this point that I put a call out, and I sort of said, look, if you are there, then I need evidence, I need proof, and I need to know that you're here to help me, and I need help. And it was like this rock bottom, whether angels exist or not, I've got to try it. And from that day on, I started to see the word angel everywhere, and the experiences I had started to become more light filled, and gradually life got better. I left that relationship. It took me a few years to still leave that relationship, but I left it. And once I got out of that relationship, my life just kind of took off, and I started to really love London. I went to work in magazines, and there was a period of definite ups and downs. But I think it was around 2007. I got this. I thought I really now have to delve in and do this work. I think I got my heart broken by a guy that I'd been seeing for a few months and thought he was the one, and then I got basically.
So how old were you there now? Because this was happening when you were 21, and then you went
It's
home.
I was 21. I think I broke up with the ex-boyfriend. How long had we been together? When I was about 23. So then when I was about
That's
25, 26, I had another big kind of land on my bum moment with the heart.
wow. So really, it started, you know, quite early in terms of that spiritual overwhelm
Yeah, the
and
shadowy stuff started
yeah,
a while.
yeah, quite
Yeah.
young.
When I was
Okay.
little, it was very light filled. I have memories of communicating telepathically with animals and trees and insects when I was little, and
Mm.
being very connected to angels when I was young, and believing in it all, and just having a really light filled time. It was around the time I hit puberty, and this is
Yeah.
coming into divine feminine, right? So
Yeah.
I've had a lot of work to do on clearing feminine karma and feminine wounds, not from this life, but from all my previous
Mm.
lifetimes. So all of this was sort of coming into adolescence as a young girl, as a Catholic who'd been, had all the Catholic guilt put on me and all the shame and everything, realizing that, there was more to it than what was going on here in this 3D reality. And so I had this major epiphany wake up call on a course, on a healing system called Theta Healing. I got given a
Mhm.
scholarship to go to the
Mhm.
universe. But there was one exercise on this course, which was how to do an angel reading. And I was very new to all the angel stuff, but since I'd had this kind of
Mm.
got the angels, they'd been around. So I was really excited about it. But I had this experience with Archangel Metatron, where the minute I closed my eyes and asked which angel was with me, I had I don't know what you would call it. I had a moment of enlightenment. It was massive. The whole room vanished. The whole universe vanished, basically. And I was as big as the universe. It was like every veil dropped away. And I was seeing gold light, geometries. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I now know it was the beginnings of precious wisdom. It started way back then. It
They
was
do, I
really,
think.
yeah.
Yeah, and they come round in circles.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, we think that we haven't encapsulated something. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, what? and then it's like, no, it's just that was the first stage, and then it comes back round
Yeah.
again, and I love it. I love how it grows. So precious wisdom, how
Yeah,
so that started when you were doing a theatre course,
that was 2007.
2007,
11
right?
years ago. That was the beginnings of it, and it was
Yeah,
just this rush of pure
when
love. I call it, it's spiritual alchemy, really, but it was
yeah,
Archangel Metatron that came through, and it was the most incredible experience because I I could see him, but I was him. It was very holographic. It was like I'd become this angel in that
mm,
moment. I'd become this archetype of creation, this, and I could see the whole universe and how it was built on geometry. It was sacred
wow,
geometry. I didn't know what any of it meant at the time.
mm,
It was like years of kind of ups and downs like this and huge epiphanies like this. I mean, I had a similar experience with Lord Melchizedek on the bus to work one day, and again the universe just went poof, and this huge being with a beard of cloud and all these rainbow colors, violet and gold, running through him. And I was like, "Who are you? You looked like a wizard." But his feet were on the ground, and he had planets orbiting his head. And it was the weirdest thing because I was him, and yet I could see him. It was very multi-dimensional, sensory, very feeling like a rush of almost euphoric love going through me. It was like having a massive
mm.
cosmic orgasm, and I'm sitting on a bus going through central London. The bus was not there anymore. At this stage, I'm like, you kind of you have no reference points. I was working as a journalist for Now magazine. I was a celebrity journalist. I had no reference points. I hadn't
Mm,
even studied angelic Reiki at that point, so I didn't know
right,
about energy healing
uh-huh,
even. So I was like, what's it? I didn't know what a channel was. I didn't know what energy healing was. I didn't even know anything about Reiki, let alone angelic Reiki or precious wisdom, which I now know. But he gave me one message, and I was like, what is this huge being doing with little old me? Like, what is going on here? It blew my mind, and I was shaking, like rushing with energy. I got to work and then had to put a magazine to press, and I was like, ugh. And he gave me two words, and it was spiritual alchemy. And at that point, I didn't really know what it was. I knew that alchemy was about turning lead into gold, and obviously, then I put two and two together, and I thought, well, it's obviously something to do with the human being and us turning our lives into gold. And then I began this huge exploration to find out what those two experiences meant. And so I went and I studied angelic Reiki. And shortly after that, I knew I was going to leave Now magazine. I put a call out to the universe, again, one of my help me get me out of here kind of moments, because I was doing about 10 different jobs on Now. And
mm,
I'd done a bit of freelance work with Spirit and Destiny, and I thought, well, I still want to use my journalism. I want to be writing, I want to be working. So put me on a magazine like Spirit and Destiny. And before I knew it, I was deputy editor of Prediction magazine. Within like 2 weeks, the job came up on the notice board. I knew it was mine. I think within about 3 weeks of working there, or 3 months, sorry, of working there, I was asked to relaunch the whole thing.
wow,
And then within 6 months, the magazine was sold and I was made the editor. So talk about being thrown in the deep end, and
yeah,
suddenly having to, going from being a senior sub editor on a national celebrity magazine to suddenly
mm,
running an entire monthly 100-page spiritual magazine every month, and having to know everything from marketing to budgets to
gosh,
tiny team of like four people. Sold
oh,
about four times, and in the end, we had an investor, and they kept trying to fold it. And I know I was kind of holding the whole thing up by
mm,
sheer will, sheer force of will. And then eventually in 2012, I ended up channeling precious wisdom. It was I was meditating in the bath one night. I was all happy with my angels. I just thought that my role was going to be to take Prediction magazine and make it the biggest and best spiritual magazine on the planet. I didn't know there was anything more to it than that. I had previously just wanted to be the editor of Marie Claire, but the universe had other ideas.
mm,
But I was sitting in the bath, meditating in my salt bath as I do, and calling on my angels. And I had an experience with some galactic beings, some galactic light beings. The visions coming through. It's very past life Egyptian. And they were bringing me symbols. Eventually, I had every member, pretty much, of the Egyptian Natiru. All of the gods and goddesses were coming through, but showing me themselves in their galactic form, and basically showing me that there is this higher galactic council of light. There are hierarchies of light through different star systems. And they were bringing me these symbols and telling me, you know, please make a note of these symbols. We're going to show you how to use them. We need you to take them to Egypt, and we need you to anchor them in the temples there. So I have notebooks of these symbols. And in the end, 6 months after that, I end up in Glastonbury. And it was almost every month that these meditations were coming through, these channelings were coming through, and the information. And I went on a sacred geometry course in Glastonbury. And on day 2 of this course, at 6 o'clock in the morning, I was woken up being given an attunement with the symbols. And I knew without a shadow of a doubt that what I had here was an energy healing system. But it was not it's not healing in the idea that you have to do anything, or that you're changing anything. It's all based on sacred geometry and ancient symbolism. It's based on gnosis. It's based on the Hermetic principles. It crosses all religions, all spiritual schools. Each symbol is from a different ancient mystery school. So they're already symbols that are in existence, but they were showing me how to use them for good, for light, for empowerment. And it's all based around unconditional love. And as we know, sacred geometry is the geometry that this whole planet, this whole universe is built on.
Wow. Intense, you know,
Yeah.
awakening at 21 and then moving halfway across the world and then kind of going, oh my God, I'm completely away from my family and I don't really know what I'm doing, but things aren't right. And then going back and having an intense time with your mum, but then that catalyzed, you know, your beginnings with the angels that really kind of showed you. So you came back to England, you felt that that was right,
Yeah.
and they started showing you that they were around and for you, and then you started having these incredibly intense experiences, cosmic orgasms on London
Yeah.
buses. I mean, the only time that I've kind of got close to that was actually laughing when I was reading a Carlos Castaneda book, and you know, when you're just there going ah, and everyone's like looking around at you. But there was a bus in South London, so actually, you know, that was quite normal behaviour. So, but yeah, so you've gone through all of that, and then you're having these kind of meltdowns and channelings and intense, like it sounds like really
Yeah.
intensely coming to
Yeah.
work with you at the same time that you're like thrown in the deep end in terms of Prediction
Well,
magazine.
yeah.
And you know, that was such an era, you know, as well, and it was just like, you know, really, I think a really intense experience for you, because you know what it's like when you have a bit of power, you know, people kind of want to know you, you know, it's like, oh, what can they do for me? And I had it with
Yes.
being a psychic reader, for instance.
Yeah.
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 And it's like, you got loads of friends. No, you just got loads of people that want free readings, you know,
Yeah.
that type of
Yeah.
thing. And then I think, you know, it's also a case of shoot the messenger. They tend to shoot the messenger. The person they see at the front, you know, is the person that will get it. And of course, you were at the front or the face of Prediction magazine. And so then, you know, when it's actually, you know, nothing to do with you at all, but
Yeah.
it's all like
It's
going in a
my
way that
head
people
in
don't
the
want it to
my
go.
head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so you've had a really intense birthing into it and a really intense ending of
It
it.
was a collapse. It was a collapse, really. It was a collapse of everything, because everything makes sense to me now. Obviously, when you're in it, and it was the beginning of a massive dark night of the soul. But when you're in it, you kind of you're just trying to keep everything afloat. Precious wisdom was coming through and being birthed. I mean, Prediction collapsed just after I got back from Egypt. I actually went to Egypt and I anchored the symbols in
wow.
all this. I did what I was kind of invited to do, and I say invited because it's never an order. It's not something to obey. It's a two-way conversation when you're channeling. This is part of discernment, which we're going to get onto in a minute. It's you don't just follow blindly. I'm not about putting light beings above us. There's no hierarchy in terms of they're here to tell us what to do. Always discern, see if it feels right to you and feels like a truth. But it felt right to me, and the universe orchestrated it, that when I had zero money, running a magazine and not much time to go on holidays, I ended up being getting a bit of a press discount to go with Stuart Pearce on his trip to Egypt and to write about it for the magazine. So we did it as a press. And I went with him, but it was about precious wisdom. It wasn't about the magazine. It was about this work. What I was doing is kind of opening light portals, helping to wake up the temples. Many light workers are doing this. Lots of people are being called to these places. Since then, I've been called halfway around the planet.
Yeah, you really have been non-stop.
Non-stop, like Easter Island and Mexico and Machu Picchu and all these places. And usually when I have no means to travel, barely any money in the bank, and the universe orchestrates it that it happens. But what's also been happening in that time is that precious wisdom as a system, it's kind of it's not a one-way thing. So we're opening divine portals. It's spiritual alchemy, bringing more of the divine and anchoring it here. It's kind of creating heaven on earth. But it does it. It's a healing system that will do that for a person. So if you're working with the symbols or the attunement, you're bringing more of your higher self and infusing it into your lower self, and then it's transforming you. But it's light, it's pure light energy. So what you'll also get is your shadow coming up to be looked at, to be healed. And the way to do that is through love, through loving acceptance. So it stands to reason that as I was having these beautiful light-filled epiphanies and this energy was coming in, it's the energy of truth. It's unconditional love, which is love without judgment. So it's not light and fluffy. So anything in my life that was inauthentic or not serving me anymore could not remain. I had a meeting with Sekhmet in the temple of Karnak, and I said, right, anything that is not in alignment with my highest good, take it. I'm done. I'm ready. Put me where you need me. Now be careful when you ask for something like that, because I came home. Within 3 months, I found myself in California standing on Mount Shasta, anchoring my symbols, which hadn't been planned at all. And when I returned from Mount Shasta, the magazine just stopped printing. My whole life and my whole career and everything I thought I was, because we live by our labels, right? So I was this girl. I had a lot of friends, people who were around me, and you really do find out who your real friends are when something like that happens. And so I lost my title, I lost everything. The ego was like, I've lost my spaceship, and was just literally left with nothing. And we didn't get redundancy payout. I was an employee, not an owner, and I then got cyberbullied quite badly. That was very confronting to me. And then I had to face a lot of my past life karma as well, and past lives where I'd been persecuted and killed for my beliefs and speaking the truth and all of that stuff, which is an ongoing process. So, but in the midst of it all, I sort of found myself, and it's such a blessing. It was like I was taken into a kind of oblivion, and I would call it, it is a dark night of the soul. A lot of people are experiencing it now. It's my friend Steve Novell calls it the wilderness zone. And I lost all my abilities to manifest, all my healing abilities stopped working, all the tricks and tools of the trade, just everything collapsed. Everything, me as a person, I sort of wasn't Al that I knew anymore. But what started to happen is I started to really simplify my life and come back to a state of just be where you are, just acceptance of where you are. At the same time, I went through a really major health situation that I'm kind of not ready to talk about, but at the right time I will, and I may write a book about it at some point. But it was a major situation where doctors were baffled. I had to heal myself, basically. I had to heal myself on every level. But what that's done is brought me into such a place of empowerment, where now I'm like, I will never work for somebody else again. And I think I'm meant to work for myself as a woman because of this rising feminine power and energy on the planet. I will now. I've published my own book of poetry. I did it myself. Really
last
recently.
month, wasn't it? You had your book launch. What's your book of poetry called?
It's called Poems of Precious Wisdom, and it is the poetry I've written through this journey of the dark night of the soul and coming back out again. So they're like prayers, so it is a bit of a healing journey for the reader as well. Everyone I've spoken to who's read it, and you normally read poetry, like you pick it up, you might read one or two and you dip into it, because you can do it a bit like bibliomancy, where you just open a book at any page. But a lot of people are saying that they're reading it from cover to cover.
Wow.
They're going journey with me, and they're feeling the raw emotion, and they're kind of healing their emotions through reading it. So it's
Uh-huh.
beautiful to hear that and have that feedback. It's
And
really good.
it's available on Amazon.
It is, yes.
It's interesting that they are reading it cover to cover, isn't it? Because with poems, you would think it would be a bit more like bibliomancy, where you're just opening it and getting something there and then. So that is quite interesting. That
Yeah,
it's
it is,
going on
and
a
I
whole
hadn't
journey.
planned to write a poetry book. I mean, I've written poetry since I was 4 years old. It's just been that's why I went into English literature,
Wow.
why I went into writing and journalism. All I wanted to do was be a poet. I just wanted to write my poetry. I'm such an air sucker. I'm a Libra, and so we kind of waft around a bit in the reading world.
Go around the world. I mean, it's taking you on this amazing, incredible journey.
Yeah,
Okay, so now you're at the place where you've got your YouTube channel, which is the Alexandra Wenman Show. So
yeah,
you've
yeah,
come out of the dark night of the soul, and you've made it's brought you the more precious wisdom by the
yeah,
sounds of it. It's like all of these things like you say, you've got to be careful what you ask for because it takes you
yeah.
on this journey, and at the end of it you're like, actually, I am so glad I did that. But I guess it's like the equivalent of, I might go for a juice detox that's
Yeah.
like a week
Yeah.
long, and you feel like crap in your body and also your emotions. It can really go that deep with you. But I think when we do these kind of things to the universe, when we say these things to the universe, it's more than a week long normally, isn't
Oh my God.
it?
I look back on it and I'm like, okay, it's 2018, and I feel like only just, I felt like a big switch kind of flicked New Year's Eve 2018.
Me
I
too.
suddenly felt like I dropped into
Yeah,
accept
how funny.
of what I'd been through, and you're the same. And so,
Yeah, it was midnight on the dot, and I was lying in Spain with flu, really bad flu, and Richard and my husband and my stepdaughter had emergency flown back to the UK because they were getting it. So they had just gone, and I was just lying there in my bed, and midnight struck, and I was like, oh, that's the last time of me being in Spain. It was just like that, bang.
yeah,
2018 arrived, and your time of living in Spain for the last year and a bit is done. Bang,
wow.
like that. So it's interesting to hear you got that. It
I got
sounds like
it. Yeah,
just
it
intense.
was like a clock chimed inside me somewhere, and it went,
Yeah,
like, you're done now. You're done with this darkness. It's time to now come out into the light. I've been waiting, especially since 2012, for those 6 years. I just was waiting for the lid to lift. Like, whenever I've had one of those rug coming out from under me moments before, at some point it would just flick back to happiness. It would be really instant. This hasn't been instant. It's been
mm,
really like hard and long, but gradually, bit by bit. It's a bit like a litmus test. We're coming out of the darkness and into the light, but it's a gradual thing. And now I feel like that was like a gateway. The beginning of 2018 was a gateway. And it's interesting for me because Egypt has been like twin pillars, and so has California. So I went to Egypt 2012, and then Mount Shasta, then my collapse started. Then at 2018, I was in California in February, and then just got back from Egypt a week ago, just over a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, on my second trip to Egypt. And I feel like end of the Mayan calendar was like a marker. But now
yeah,
this was like a cooling off period. This 5 6 year period has been like, that period's finished. This is a bit like the sort of no man's land in between, where we've been shedding and like being the caterpillar in the chrysalis. And 2018 is now the real end of that period. It's the beginning. This is the beginning. If you had like notes on a keyboard and you have the two white notes and then the little black note in between, we've been on that little black note, that minor key in between before we hit the
it
next.
makes so much sense because in 2012, like I went through a similar kind of,
Yeah,
and it was 2018 and coming back to England that actually was like, that is done.
yeah,
But it did, yeah, it makes so much sense what you're saying. I'm really, really feeling it. So now you're kind of obviously so much in tune with the energies and the vibrations of the universe, and you're coming out of that crazy, like, 2012 was nuts, and yeah, it was all kind of kicking off. And
We didn't see it coming. I mean, we knew, but I think I was just so naive. I think I was still like naive little Pollyanna, and I needed to get in my
uh-huh,
power. I think the same with you, Tiff, and a
yeah,
lot of my
completely,
workers, because the
yeah,
darkness isn't done. I mean, there's still a lot of shadow coming up, and this is why I do the work I do now, is I help people navigate through their shadow to come back out into the light. And it's not about getting rid of anything or get rid of the darkness, block it out,
yeah, yeah,
fix it. It's always going to be there. It's about lovingly embracing it and transforming it. That's what alchemy is. The more
mm,
love and the more acceptance you can put into it. Like facing the shadow is not fun. Like having to take ownership of the fact that as humans, we have yucky emotions. We feel like jealousy and snipishness and fear and doubt and shame and guilt and all those yucky, uncomfortable things. And a lot of the work that I know both you and I do is in past lives or parallel lives or
mm,
karmic lifetimes. Some of them are future lives. But I think also what we have to be careful of is going into escapism by looking too much at the past or the future. I think it's very relevant, and karma, it needs looking at. We have to take
mm,
ownership that all of us have had lifetimes in the light and in the dark. We have all had the whole spectrum. We've all been nasty bastards to each other, excuse my language. Like, we've all been awful at some point. We wouldn't still be here if we weren't. And, you wouldn't come up against people or have challenges if you weren't. So instead of pointing the finger at somebody else, use them as a mirror. Say thank you, because they're here to show you. Like, because I'm a seer, I had a really awful experience of attack from people in 2016 and a little bit in 2017. It still happens now, but it's just
mm,
because I think I'm more sensitive. So if someone's sending me a negative thought, I get to see the whole spectrum of what's going on. And you can send entities to people with your thoughts. Like, we have to be so careful what we do. Like, there was one person,
mm,
I was like, oh my God, why is she attacking me? And then the emotion came up of what it was. And I'm lucky in that way because I get to see psychically what's going on. But it's great to, if you can't see, get some help or find out or learn how to see. It's not something that is only there for the few. You can train yourself. But I got to see this past life where I'd sent her to burn at the stake. So it was like my karma coming back to.
absolutely. Really important to always see the bigger picture. And I think that's one thing about past life regression, is that it does help you to see the bigger picture. And then you realize that actually you're not guilty for anything. They're not guilty for anything. There is a
Yeah,
bigger picture. But the
yeah,
Pollyanna thing is really interesting, because that is something that I've got quite into, in terms of, yes, I'm a Leo, I can be really naive. I, as a reader, I mean, I think a lot of psychics. Okay, so it sounds like you had some way an idyllic family life background, but still, as there is with every family, there is, um, things that aren't perfect. So it
yeah,
sounds like confines, and even like a simple sentence that is normal and every mother uses, such as a threat to send you to boarding school, and then like another threat later not to, is it's something what I call codependent behavior.
definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
And I I have got a real personal interest. This has been my journey in particular, that from 2012 to now, in
yeah.
terms of particularly people that are psychic or empaths or things like that. They do tend to have had um, some codependent. Everybody does anyway, but a childhood where they've needed to actually grow up before they should have done.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Pia Melody is amazing on the codependence, and she says, codependence is when anybody is angry at you for being a child when you are a child,
Yeah.
basically, and they're not seeing that reality that you are actually a child, and I think a lot of people that grow up sensitive have had that in their background. And for me, what I kept doing, also being sensitive, psychic, and things come up from that. It's like being trained to be a psychic in some way, to see what's going on, and always be on that alert.
Like detectives, don't we? But to ourselves, like you have to turn your attention inwards to figure out
You
why
have to turn your attention
why
inwards. I think what happens is, so what happened for me is that I would meet people and I would see their potential, and I'd get that potential mixed up with the reality of who they are.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would also
Yeah.
feel their karma. So it's
Yes.
like I was seeing all their past, all their future, all their potential, all of that. And it was all coming into the now, and it was completely blurring who they were now. So, what you're saying here about, yes, there's the past and the future, but actually the now is where we are. And
Yeah.
we have, it's so important, not just in terms of of course, a negative thought is an entity. When people talk about curses or things like that, it's like, well, you're just thinking of someone, and if you're thinking negative thoughts, that's it, that's enough.
Yeah.
So it's about kind of getting that bigger picture of realization that none of us are, it's all part of a big chess game in a way, and we're being moved around. But what I'm trying to say is, I think what you're teaching now is really relevant, not just on the spiritual and mental discernment of guides, but also in terms of when you have a relationship with someone, what parts of those are coming from the past that are needing to be cleared. Where is that muddying you? What are you seeing in terms of their potential, and are you getting the potential mixed up with the reality? Because if you are, you're going to get some really rude wake ups. And if you are into this way of being, you've probably got some like programs running yourself on a codependent level that will make it really bloody tricky. So I think the discernment side of things that you're teaching now is really important, even on that day-to-day human existence relationship place as well.
Yeah, because we have to live now here. It's about heaven on earth. It's about understanding that all of it is part of who we are now. You won't ever find a bully who thinks they're a bully. You find most people tend to go into that place of being a victim. And when you see that everyone is just acting from their place of wounding, if they're misbehaving, it's usually only out of a belief that they're somehow lacking in love, or that they're somehow not getting the love that they deserve. Then you can go into compassion. But it doesn't mean that you're excusing bad behavior. It just means that you can see it from that higher, more loving perspective, have a bit more of an understanding of it in order to heal it. And the best way to heal a dynamic between you and another is to heal what it brings up for you. Use that person or that situation as a mirror. And I do a lot of work with trapped emotions these days as well. It's all connected. There's trapped emotions, there's subconscious programming, beliefs, thoughts, feelings, oaths, vows, and contracts that you may have made in a previous life, or this life that you might not be aware that you've made. Like we've talked about, Tiff, curse energy, but it sounds so much darker and more macabre. Sometimes really is. Like a curse could be someone just thinking, what a bitch, and having that thought about you, and they've cursed you, and they don't understand, they don't know the power of what they've sent, or and vice versa. So I always say to people, don't take anything personally. Like
me too, Al. I run the courses by the 4 agreements. Do you know the 4 agreements you must do? It's
very
amazing.
Good. Very good.
Whenever there's any dynamics in the group, I just go and look at those 4 agreements again, and they go and they look at the 4 agreements.
Go, oh yeah.
And they're like, exactly. Oh, of course, it's not about me at all. Ding, never is.
Also need to go easy on ourselves, because God, the energies on this planet right now, especially when you're a sensitive or you're a light worker or a healer, they are bloody intense. They really, and it can screw with your mind. Like you're trying to put it into a logical framework and a logical reference point, and kind of going, why would somebody that's supposed to be my friend be sending me energy? The thing is, they might not be aware that they are as well. A lot of stuff, if
Yeah.
it's that gets triggered between you and somebody else. I've been on both sides of the spectrum. I've had energy sent to me that hasn't been very nice, and I've been like, whoa. But then I've also been accused of sending people energy when it wasn't me sending it.
When we go into the spiritual arena, it's usually happening through some kind of trauma, you
Yeah,
know.
exactly. When
And
you don't know, usually it's someone doesn't know, or it might be a past life where they were misusing their power, and if they haven't looked at it, then it could be happening. I am always looking at myself, always, but you can also then go into the other side of ego, which is where you're too critical of yourself and you're not holding people accountable for their end of the bargain. Because if someone also thinks that you're sending them energy, they need to look at their shadow. So,
well,
it makes
exactly,
two tango.
this is what we were saying about love and compassion. It always starts with the self, right?
Absolutely.
It doesn't exist otherwise,
Yeah.
so I think yeah, I think what it is we can all be really sensitive psychic balls and bounce off each other. Like when I worked in mysteries and there were 7 psychics on, you know, together, and it's just like I was there for 7 years, and it was like, like I remember one psychic after about 7 years of working together just went bing at me and was like, since
Wow.
day one, you've blah blah blah. And she was quite an intimidating character, but I thought, no, you know what? I'm going to go in her room and see what this is about. And so that's another one of the 4 agreements is be clear with your communication.
Transparent communication. I think from the
Yeah,
outset, the minute that you sense something with somebody, get it
absolutely.
up, get it clear, and clear the decks. Like, just be like, look, I'm feeling this. Can we be? It's wonderful when you've got good friendships that where it is unconditional love, where you can say, look, I think there's something coming up between us. What's your take on it? And you can play with it together. You can talk it out, and that's what will heal it. Because
That's the
if you
most
build it up in
valuable
your
thing
mind,
there
it's
is.
dangerous.
Yeah, it's the most valuable thing there is, and that's when you find out who your real friends are and who you can do that with. And Brené Brown says an amazing one that is because again you can get people's defenses up if you're not careful. So Brené Brown says basically, what is it? When this happened, the story I told myself was,
Yeah,
because that
it's
was a complete story that she'd made
yeah,
up from day one. She'd been harboring it. And I was like, what? For
yeah,
7 years. So I
yeah.
just went in there and was like, that was just a real shock for me. It was just like, and then she was just like totally fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think we can really project a lot and we have to be very careful of that. And so we're blessed to have you coming into the Inner Transformation Circle
Thank
on
you.
June the 14th at 8 p.m. BST time.
Yes.
And what are you going to be doing? You're going to be doing Precious Wisdom.
Personal power.
Wow.
So I'm going to be teaching a few techniques. I'm going to be teaching a few channeling techniques, or at least how to discern the energies around you. So it's mainly
Mm,
about discernment and stepping into your power. So, first of all, to figure out if the energies you're working with are of the light and have your best interests at heart. And a little bit of my kind of channeling, I call it my channeling checklist. So, to kind of show you how to open
great.
up, work with your guides. And then I want to teach some tools and techniques for shifting energy. Mostly I work with trapped emotions, so I'm going to be taking people through a process of clearing trapped emotions. And I work with a pendulum as well, so I might talk a little bit about dowsing, how to use a pendulum to kind of work with your higher self, not to rely too heavily on this, but so that you can just kind of get confirmation on those inner hunches, those inner nudges. And maybe we'll do a little bit of work on clearing things like negative or limiting beliefs, contracts or contract work. But I think the emotions is a really good one because it's easy. Anyone can work with their emotions. You don't need to be clairvoyant. You don't need to be clairaudient. Everyone has a feeling sensitivity.
Mm,
Every single person on this planet has emotions. And I just want to teach some techniques for navigating that emotional awareness, that emotional body, because sometimes your emotions can be so overwhelming. We have people on antidepressants all over the place on this planet at the moment, and half of them don't need to be on those
Mm.
drugs. It's just about figuring out, right, what am I feeling? And instead of going, oh, I don't like that emotion and squashing it down, invite it to come up and start to interact with it as though it has its own consciousness. And you can end up having a conversation with it and finding out what it is that it's come to teach you.
Wow. Do we actually give ourselves the time to actually go, oh, that emotion, I don't like it, but actually I'm going to sit with it. I'm going to welcome it and give it a cup of tea and say, okay, what have you got to tell me? We don't have the time for that these days. And yet that's the most valuable thing we
Yeah.
should be doing, really, when you think about it. It's like if we all could do that, wow, how would we grow?
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny, like I taught this just to a friend of mine who's only just starting out on her spiritual path. She's based in Australia. She's just started out on it and she's having a really tough time. And I just taught her a few of these techniques. And she's off. She's off and running. She's healing herself. She's doing daily clearings and she's like, she's never felt better. She's like, suddenly it's kind of awakened her to her own innate healing gifts. And just with a few little tweaks, she's kind of gone, massive awakening. It's just, and it's wonderful to see. And I feel like I work one-on-one with people all the time, and because I can see and I have the tools to work through what they're going through quickly. Previously it would be that I would do the work for them, but more and more now I think it's really important to empower people by showing them how to do the work themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I am putting together a Precious Wisdom Personal Power online course as well. So once that's up and running, then people can come and join in and do that as well, which will go much more in depth into all of it.
I know that you are an amazing channel, and it's incredible the work that you do. And can't wait to see what happens on June the 14th and with your rest of your dynamic, amazing, powerful journey that I've been blessed to witness for the last 7 years or so.
Also, like whenever you know how it is, whenever we teach, there might be, depending on who the group is and the dynamic of the group, inevitably something that is unplanned might come up as well. So that I always keep space for that. So I never do a hard and fast itinerary. It's just like whatever that group needs at the time. There may even be some channeling coming through, a message for the group or something. So we'll just see what happens in the time frame that we have. But I can't wait, and I'm very, very excited that you've invited me to be part of this, honey. Thank you so much. I think our work is so synchronistic, and I know that we've had many lifetimes of doing this stuff together and being
it's crazy. It's crazy. I've actually got first tarot columnist of Prediction magazine.
Oh my goodness!
And I'm the last.
Wow. Bless her.
It's not so strong at the moment, but when I first heard of her, which was at the UK Tarot Conference, and they put a picture up on the screen, it was like spit,
And how wonderful it meant to be a woman then that was the final one too, because it was a woman that kicked it off.
It was a woman that kicked it off. The Witch of St. Giles, apparently, which was where Mysteries was. Yeah, and there was loads, what you've mentioned today about hermetics and things. Of course, that's all very much in her life, and something to do with the Alexandra coven as well, or something, interestingly enough.
I must look into that. There's been a lot coming up with my name recently. I was in Alexandria in Egypt. I took my little piece of Alexandrite crystal to Alexandria to kind of get the energies. There's a lot coming up around my name. I think I love that my name, it's like if you separate it out, it's Alex and Ra.
Wow. Well, that says it all about Egyptian connection for sure. My gosh,
I've got my scarab on today. My
wow
scarab.
Well, I know whoever attends your class in the Inner Transformation Circle, like if you are a member already, this means it's free for you. If you aren't, then you can join on the button below and just come in and witness some of Al's amazing Precious Wisdom personal power. The energy that's going to be channeled through is incredible, as I'm sure you can probably tell from having her beautiful being with us here today on this little interview. So thank you very much, Al, and we'll see you soon.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.